Colorado prepares for insurrectionists to show up at the state capitol next week as the FBI warns of new threats across America. A Colorado Congresswoman faces calls to resign for her actions before and during the attempted coup. She passes the blame to Madonna, Johnny Depp, and Robert De Niro. The University of Denver is wrestling with the fact that Parler, the social media site that's a hotbed for hate and threats of violence, the site was started by DU alumni. We look at just how closely Colorado's looking for the new, more contagious COVID, and we'll meet a family sharing the gift of vaccination. And what do you say we grab coffee at a place that managed to keep all its staff working through the pandemic? They'll tell us how they did it next. The failed takeover of the U.S. Capitol was not the end. Not if you listen to the people who planned that violence. Not if you listen to what the FBI warned law enforcement across America. The FBI is preparing for armed people to march on every state capitol starting next weekend. Our state legislature plans to be in and out of that ahead of that period this week, which leaves our Marshall Zellinger to look at preparations to defend Colorado's Capitol without legislators inside its walls.
Temporary fencing surrounds the Capitol, and this existed even before the FBI put out a warning nationwide of armed marches being planned on state capitol buildings starting Saturday.
We don't have any information to make us worried or concerned more than any other American should be concerned or worried right now.
Democratic Senate Majority Leader Steve Fenberg told me whatever happens outside the building won't get in the way of the democratic process.
We feel pretty confident the State Patrol is planning for worst case scenarios, hoping that it doesn't happen.
So far, the worst case has been the vandalism to the state capitol and other government buildings that we saw this summer, not to the extreme we saw in D.C. last week.
There's right and there's wrong. And to come and have your voice heard is absolutely your First Amendment right. If you cross that line and cause vandalism, cause damage, and take away from other people their government and the ability to access their government, that's wrong.
I asked Republican House Minority Leader Representative Hugh McKean if he would have any issue with a member of his caucus joining an armed march at the Capitol.
It's up to every member to make a decision for themselves on what they want to participate and do and say. The onus is on the members, and certainly in Colorado, it's up to their voters.
Colorado State Patrol put out a statement about this weekend's potential armed marches, saying, "Our agency is prepared for this potential activity and emphasizes the importance of a peaceful approach that allows for safe public disclosure for all. In the future, sometime after this year's legislative session, there will be more permanent security measures in place at the Capitol, like a permanent fence."
It won't be a fence in front of the steps, and the public doors into the building will not be blocked off by fences either.
Democratic Representative Susan Lontine was the head of one committee that's already given approval for security upgrades, though the changes will have to be approved by other committees and potentially the entire legislature if new money is needed. One other security measure that I'm really interested in at the Capitol, we've talked about this before, there's those really heavy metal doors that exist almost, I think they're original, and they're like shutters to a window, except they're decorative because they're kept open and they cannot be closed. One of the measures might be to actually make them functional again and close over those glass entry doors. Kyle, I reached out to the governor's office to see if the National Guard has already been told you'll be working this weekend, and I still don't get a yes or no answer from the governor's office. The statement basically says they're monitoring the situation, and should things turn violent and unlawful like they did in D.C., then they will look at possibly the National Guard.
Well, hopefully they just said that in a statement to you, Marshall, and let's hope they're smarter than that, because the National Guard takes time to mobilize, because these are men and women who work other jobs and then would have to come into the armory and get their stuff and go down there. That was the issue in D.C., was that there wasn't enough communication to get there in time. So, Marshall, this also brings up to me the idea of whether we are going to see law enforcement or members of the Guard put in a position where they are risking their safety to defend essentially an empty building. That was one of the arguments over the summer when rioters were, spray painting it and that sort of thing. The thought was, well, we're going to be hands off because we don't want to get some guardsmen killed to prevent graffiti.
there is that temporary fencing right there up right now, and there won't be lawmakers there after Friday, so that could be the case. I don't know whether or not they're going to fortify the outside to prevent any more danger to the building, but I know they don't want anybody getting inside the building, I can tell you that.
Yeah. All right. Marshall, thank you very much. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert launched her political career recently with a real knack for drawing attention to herself, and she has a ton of it today. The Republican from Rifle went viral on social media due to calls for her resignation for stoking insurrectionist rhetoric before the attempted coup at the U.S. Capitol, and then for tweeting about the whereabouts of Speaker Nancy Pelosi during the siege. Boebert stoked this election rigging fantasy, and on the day of the insurrection in Washington, she told her followers that that day was 1776. As insurrectionists stormed the Capitol, Boebert tweeted that House members were locked in their chambers, then tweeted that Speaker Nancy Pelosi, third in line of the presidency, that she had been removed from the chambers. Now, bear in mind, evidence only kind of emerged after the fact that this crowd was shouting to hang Vice President Mike Pence. They appeared ready to take hostages inside the building. Now, as that has come out, now Boebert's tweets are getting fresh attention. There are people claiming that Boebert put Speaker Pelosi in danger. Boebert was hardly the only person who was providing live play-by-play of that insurrection from their viewpoint inside the Capitol. Boebert's team has not responded to my questions about whether the FBI has reached out to her about her actions or her social media posts. Boebert released a rambling stream of consciousness statement late this afternoon saying that she did nothing wrong and blaming Democrats for political violence in America, specifically pointing to Madonna, Johnny Depp, and Robert De Niro. The University of Denver is condemning hate today, as the university faces calls from the DU community to do more than that, because it was DU alums who founded Parler, the platform for threats and hate speech that got very popular with conservatives fleeing Twitter recently before Parler was kicked off of the internet last night. Parler CEO John Matzey and Chief Technical Officer Jared Thompson both studied computer science at DU. Their 2-year-old app became the #1 free app on iPhones late last week, when mainstream media platforms banned President Trump for inciting violence. DU put out a statement today saying in part, quote, "The University of Denver condemns any and all calls to violence, insurrection, or sedition." A group of DU alumni, led by former student body vice president Jess Davidson, would like DU to do more.
I'm not really looking for a fight, but I do want to ensure that the university is taking this as seriously as the rest of the country is. Institutions are often very, very reticent to disavow the actions of their students. And I understand that it's a slippery slope, and we are in unprecedented times as a nation. And this is not a typical situation that requires a typical response.
So this is interesting. Davidson wants DU to disclose if it helped to develop Parler. A list of alumni demands of the schools being formulated this week. Parler has attracted a lot of prominent conservatives, including some elected Republicans in Colorado. The site is promising that it will return as soon as it can find a hosting partner willing to be associated with it. Tomorrow marks 2 weeks since the more contagious variant of COVID-19, the one first found in the UK, turned up in Colorado. In those 2 weeks, the state has identified 4 total cases. Our Steve Staker spent his day trying to figure out if Colorado just got lucky or if it's out there and we can't see it.
Given that there's no history of travel for any of these first 4 cases during their incubation period, it's likely that they acquired this from community spread.
And that leads Emily Travanti, the state's lab director, to think we aren't just lucky. There's likely more of the variant out there, she says. It's just hard to test for.
Every test in the state doesn't come through the state laboratory, and not every laboratory is running a test that could detect this dropout variant.
Labs that have the capability can search for a genetic flag in the virus, indicating it may be the variant. Then the sample has to be sequenced to see if it meets the genetic code, which takes a while.
A sequencing test can take up to 3 days or longer, depending on just how strong the signal is within the patient sample. We really do not have the capacity for that in Colorado at all to do every positive test that's coming through. And so we're trying to really have a targeted approach.
Travanti says they're searching for this in 3 ways: testing samples that have the genetic marker, testing samples of people known to be exposed to one of the variant cases, and asking labs statewide to send a small number of positive samples for sequencing each week.
We have over 16 facilities right now that have agreed to send us at least 5 positives every week. So we're looking to start sequencing 60 to 100 samples from across the state.
Again, she says she believes there are more than 4 cases out there. It just may take some time to start finding them.
Looking at data from the UK, that when it first emerged, there was a few sporadic cases, and then it started to spread more after that. So we could be early as well in the spread of this variant.
Now, the first case of that variant was found in Elbert County, Simla specifically. Today, the Public Health Department did public COVID testing at Simla High School, and the public health director says they will submit all positive samples to the state to test for the variant, Kyle.
No more deadly, should respond to the vaccines, but because it spreads quickly, it's a numbers game. More cases, more hospitalizations, more deaths. That's why we're taking it so seriously. Thank you, Steve. Yesterday, the state got 2,200 more Coloradans vaccinated for COVID-19. At this point, more than 187,000 of our neighbors have had at least their first shot. That's 3.3% of the state population. We're making progress. 833 people are currently hospitalized in Colorado. That's down 100 patients from this time last week. The increasing COVID case rates have not yet translated into more people in the hospital. Positivity rate has plateaued a bit lately, 6.4% yesterday. Right now it is at 7.7% when you average out the week. New cases came in low yesterday, 1,500 or so, well below our 7-day average for new cases, which was at more than 2,300 per day. Kind of best to wait and see this week if yesterday's number is just a weekend lag in testing. The impact of your generosity has been felt in every corner of this state. I wanted to update you that you raised $62,000 to feed food pantries in North Park, the one in Jackson County and 3 in Grand County. $62,000 in just a couple of days to get fresh food to people who otherwise might have trouble driving in the winter long distances to get it and might not be able to afford very much. Your Word of Thanks micro-giving campaigns have now raised $2.6 million for small and mid-sized nonprofits across our state. I'll be back on Wednesday with an idea that I think can do a lot of good.
We celebrate our 26th anniversary this week, and so this is her anniversary gift to me.
25th anniversary is silver, 26th anniversary is shots. Everyone knows that. Nothing says love like gently needling your spouse. And it's a new way to do business.
We rely on community to help us out, and they showed up in a huge way.
The success of a coffee shop in the pandemic proves there is more than one way to succeed. Next. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman's homelessness photo op for CBS 4 seems to have backfired pretty badly. Kaufman recently spent a week on the streets with a camera crew along, and then he declared to the public that homelessness is a lifestyle choice. That did not go over well with those who understand and actually work to alleviate homelessness in our community. So the mayor had been pushing for a camping ban for Aurora, came out today and said he's going to hold off, try to better understand the issue.
If it has to be Monday, it might as well look like this, with clear skies and mild temperatures. All of the cloud cover and moisture going north of us over a building ridge of high pressure. Temperatures today in the mid-40s will go 10 degrees warmer tomorrow and even warmer, close to 60 on Wednesday, ahead of a Pacific storm that may bring some mountain snow showers on Wednesday and cooler weather to Denver on Thursday. Tonight, cold enough at 21 with fair skies and light winds. Tomorrow, 53 with sunshine. Close to 60 on Wednesday with mountain snow. And then we've got an isolated snow shower on Thursday, warmer Friday, and a better chance of snow showers on Saturday with cooler weekend highs in the low to mid-40s.
Getting vaccines is often a family decision, and that's typically where the hands-on family involvement in the process ends. Except in this case.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Whitney Dempsey is preparing for his second round of the COVID vaccine.
I just logged on and picked a time.
His wife is also getting her second shot today.
So we just happened to sign up on the same day?
No, we need to. Okay. Yeah. Both are employees at Lutheran Medical Center. She works in labor and delivery, welcoming people into the world.
I provide spiritual care for all of our patients and families.
And he's in hospice care, helping people with their life transition.
It's an honor to care for families who are really going through some difficult times.
Together, they're celebrating their 26th wedding anniversary, and Amy has something special for her husband.
Oh, I would say very unusual.
She's pretty good with a needle. I'm not going to say anything negative at this point before the shot. It'll be a nice anniversary gift.
It just so happens today, Amy is volunteering to administer shots. First up,
I'm ready.
Oh my gosh, am I ready?
Her husband, Whitney.
Are we ready?
Oh my gosh, you're making me nervous, Amy.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, here we go.
Didn't feel a thing.
As simple as that, another first for frontline workers. Amy delivers an anniversary gift securing their future and celebration of life together.
26 years.
You put the Band-Aid?
Did you want a badge of honor?
Yeah.
For next, I'm Tom Cole.
Restaurants have gone through contortions to stay profitable during the pandemic. Coffee shop in Denver didn't have to change much.
You're trying to upend the way that we think about traditional business, where profit is king.
A look at their social enterprise business model next. We've heard so many restaurants, bars, coffee shops talk about their struggles to keep employees on through the pandemic. Today, we take a trip to a nonprofit coffee shop in Denver with a community service-based business model. They've kept the whole staff working.
You're trying to upend the way that we think about traditional business, where profit is king, right? My name's Steph Francis. I'm the founder and executive director at Prodigy Ventures and Prodigy Coffee House. We hire young adults from Denver who haven't found success in traditional school or work structures. First of all, they're being paid a living wage, but they're also getting hundreds and hundreds of hours of paid professional development. Technically, our model is called a social enterprise, which means we are an organization that has this social mission, but we also have this revenue generating business. And our overall general operating costs are paid for by both the revenue from the business and foundation and philanthropy and donors. We made a decision mid-March to close our coffee house for 2 months. Even though we didn't have revenues coming into the coffee house, we were able to be funded by some of our philanthropists and our supporters and donors who really doubled down on support. We were able to retain all of our staff and apprentices at that time. There is a movement in the past decade that social enterprises are becoming more prominent, and people are seeing that they're actually extremely key as you're looking at how do we design an economy that's more equitable. Like, our community already has what it needs to be so powerful and successful and vibrant and soulful. And so we're just trying to create a space where those young people can come in and step into their inherent greatness.
One more way to make things work. Your fiery feedback next. In your feedback tonight, Laura asked a simple question. Maybe it isn't a simple question. What is happening to our country? In 10 seconds, Laura, what's happening is when you lie to people so frequently and you make belief in ever more fantastical lies part of an initiation rite for a club that people feel they have to belong to, they're willing to do some very, very scary things. See you next time.